My name is David Bjarnson, and this is my talk. This is the way, what the Mandalorian taught me about Agile teams. So hopefully you're in the right session. This is kind of a new experience for me. I've given a few talks at Code PaLOusa before, but obviously never one virtual. So handling chats and kind of staring at myself is kind of odd, but we'll get through this. So thank you guys for joining. And before we get started on my talk here, just want to mention the sponsors for Code PaLOusa this year, an amazing group of sponsors here. So within the application, you can actually see, I think they have booth setups in the expo section of the application. So if you click on that and check them out, I think a couple are doing drawings and stuff. So please go check them out and support the sponsors that support Code PaLOusa. A little about me. I work at eBlue Solutions. eBlue Solutions is a software solution for practices that have patients that receive highly or very expensive infusion treatments. So our software helps the practice manage the benefits and the coverage necessary to provide those treatments to the patients that are in need for those expensive treatments. So I've been at eBlue Solutions as a senior business analyst just for a few months. I've been in the Louisville community for 7 or 8 years now. No, actually longer than that, 9 or 10 actually. So worked in various companies, but I've always been a business analyst. It's just kind of my jam, I guess, in the tech space. I write a blog on vikingagilist.com. So my passion is Agile frameworks, Agile methodologies, the Agile principles that you'll see, which is why I'm doing my talk here. So if you want to learn more about various things regarding Agile and how it can really improve your life, feel free to check out my blog. And I play in Flutter, Dart, and Firebase. So I'm creating my own application, trying to learn how to code and how to do things that the smart people do on my team. So I have an application that's currently in beta on the Google Play Store that I'm trying to get finalized and testing and released. So that's kind of what I do on the side in addition to all sorts of other things. But that's from the technical standpoint, that's what I'm doing there. Now, before I get into the talk, I just want to give you the obligatory spoiler alert. If you haven't seen The Mandalorian, it's been about a year since the last episode came out, so I don't feel bad if I'm spoiling it for you. And if you haven't seen The Mandalorian, first, shame on you. It's a great series, and I'm a big Star Wars nerd, so you need to see it. But if you haven't seen it, that's okay. You can still listen to this talk. I'll explain things, obviously spoiling the entire story for you, but I'll give you the context that you need to understand kind of what's going on at a super, super high level. And also the images that were in the title screen and the subsequent images that are used throughout this presentation are copyright of Lucasfilms and probably Disney. So I don't claim any ownership for these images, but they are used to explain the story and also explain the principles that we're going to be talking about today. So with all that said, let's get moving on to the actual presentation here. So The Mandalorian, when you think of The Mandalorian, actually I was talking about what I was going to say here on this talk with my father, and he's like, "Why are you using The Mandalorian? That's a story of one guy, isn't it?" And you know, on first glance, I can see where he's coming from because, you know, in the title screen here, you have the Mandalorian, the one guy, the lone individual featured on the title screen. And so you might think that the Mandalorian is a story about one guy, the rugged individual that's going to basically achieve all odds and become the hero. And then that is reinforced with the first shot in the episode. In the first shot, you see the Mandalorian coming into a cantina, there to collect his bounty. And the Mandalorian has all the tools needed to get the job done. And so he successfully collects the bounty, turns in the guy that had the bounty on his head. And you see that he's, you know, done this frequently. He's really successful at what he does. He knows what he's doing. Every tool that he has, all his wits, the knowledge, the abilities that he has are self-contained, and he can overcome pretty much any obstacle that's thrown at him. So again, you kind of think that, well, The Mandalorian's really a story of one guy, right? But later on in the second episode, the Mandalorian finds out that limits do exist, right? So in the second episode, he has to confront a Mudhorn, which is essentially a Star Wars rhinoceros, basically. And it's at this point where the Mandalorian realized that even though he's an army of one, he's going to need help or else he's going to be destroyed. So this Mudhorn pretty much bested him, despite his tools, despite his armor, despite his knowledge and abilities. The Mudhorn is essentially going to end his life, right? Until he gets help from a unsuspecting source, I guess, from this child here. We don't know the name, but it's not Baby Yoda. It's a child that's in the same species of Yoda. So this child essentially uses the Force and saves the Mandalorian from certain doom using his special abilities. So what you see here in the very second episode is a story going from one person, an army of one, to a team of two. And then throughout the course of the first season, we see that various alliances exist where teams are formed and objectives are met and things are successful. So because I'm a geek, you can liken a lot of what you see in The Mandalorian to how a successful Agile team can perform with certain qualities and traits. And so for the rest of the talk, I'm going to show you what those traits are and how they can combine to make your team and to make you become truly awesome. Let's take a look at what is an Agile team. According to the Agile Alliance, an Agile team is a team in the Agile sense is a small group of people assigned for the same project or effort, and nearly all of them on a full-time basis. So that's from the Agile Alliance, and there's additional definitions that come into play. But if you break down kind of what you see in The Mandalorian, you come up with these various traits within an Agile team. So an Agile team has a vision, it's self-organized and cross-functional, it's disciplined, and it's a manageable team size, meaning that it's small, and it's collaborative and fosters growth. So these are some of the traits that are exhibited in various stories within The Mandalorian that we're going to review. But this list that I have here is not exhaustive. So if you have some of these traits, that's great. But maybe you have some traits that aren't listed, and that's perfectly fine too, right? These are just things that we're going to see in The Mandalorian. So just to outline the next part of this talk, we're going to go over an instance where the team was where a team was formed and it was unsuccessful, and then an instance where a team was formed that was successful in meeting its objectives. And we're going to review each of those teams in the lens of these qualities here and see how they stacked up in terms of their performance and how they gelled as a team. Okay. So let's go through the first team that's formed, not really the first team, but the first team that we're going to look at, where the team was formed and it just did not work out well, right? So what we'll see here is this team had a few of the qualities that were listed on the previous slide, but there were also other things that were missing. So going into the backstory of this team, the guy with a beard essentially hires the Mandalorian to free a prisoner on a rebel ship. Okay, so he brings in the Mandalorian, and he has also assembled a team to fulfill this mission, to meet this objective. So on this team, he puts together the Mandalorian, who's got all the skills that we've seen before. He's certainly successful and would be able to accomplish the mission. But the Mandalorian is bolstered with the additional people that this person puts on the team. So he adds this guy here, who's kind of like the long-range weapons specialist. He's an Imperial sharpshooter, which I guess that's a thing. And then you have this guy who is the muscle of the team. He's very skilled in hand-to-hand combat, so he can find his way there. And we have this droid who's the pilot who can get the team in and out of their expected location with no problems, and certainly skilled at flying the ships. And then we have this lady here who is the mid-range combat specialist. She's good with short-range weapons. She has a lot of knives. And so basically what you see in this team is that it's cross-functional. Pretty much any scenario that you can think of with the team that's put in place, they should be able to overcome any kind of dangerous situation or any kind of conflict that might arise. So This is one thing that this team has going for it. It's definitely cross-functional. Everyone has a particular role that they can play, but also they have enough skill and enough experience where they can back up other people on the team if necessary. So this is a good example of a cross-functional team. Moving on, the team is also self-organized. So what you see here is as they're going to the rebel ship to perform their duties or execute on their mission, the guy that put the team together, the guy with the beard, isn't with the team. So he essentially gave them the mission saying, hey, go to the rebel ship, free this prisoner, and that was their objective. He didn't go with them and call the shots and direct how each person was supposed to operate. The latitude was given for the team to self-organize and find their own roles and find their own way to execute on a mission. So again, another thing going for this team is that it was self-organized. Another thing that's good for this team is the team size. So here we have a team of 5 people, if you count the droid that's in the ship kind of monitoring the security forces on the rebel ship. And with 5 people on this team, it's a certainly manageable team where they can operate as a network. Information can flow easily to each person on the team, and decisions can be made quickly, and they can overcome and adapt to any circumstance or changing situation that may come in their way. So definitely this is a good team size for the mission that they were given. However, that's about all the team has going for it. What we find out later in the story is that things start to go horribly wrong. So circumstances changed, and information, it turned out, was withheld from the Mandalorian, and the team started making decisions that were individual based and not team based. And so basically what happens is the Mandalorian is betrayed by everyone else on the team. So the Mandalorian basically has to fall back to his army of one mentality and preserve his life and still meet the objective of the mission. So what happens is the Mandalorian essentially gets these teammates, or after he's betrayed, he locks these teammates up on the rebel ship. He successfully frees the prisoner, and he successfully brings the prisoner back to the space station where the guy with the beard, the manager dude, was waiting. So there was a successful mission, even though the team kind of fell apart. The Mandalorian was able to bring the prisoner back to the guy with the beard. However, even though that mission was a success, ultimately the team failed as well. The prisoner and the manager, the guy with the beard, betrayed the Mandalorian and tried to kill him. Luckily, the Mandalorian escaped, and the prisoner and the manager guy was essentially left to face the business end of a proton torpedo from a squadron of X-Wings. So obviously this team had some things going for it, but a lot of things didn't go well with it. And this team didn't get past that storming phase. So if there's the storming, norming, performing phase, this team never made it to the storm phase. Actually, this is not really a team anyway. It was more of a group of people that were just kind of working together. So let's take a look at this team in comparison to the traits that we listed. First off, this team didn't have a vision, right? So they were put together, but there was no shared operating agreement or understanding of who the team was. There was no team identity that really pulled them together. So when there was difficult circumstances, the team really couldn't coalesce and form a team. Really, it was just specifically just a group of people working together without that vision. And that vision was really, we'll see later, is a really key component of making an Agile team. You have to have some sort of vision of who the team is, what kind of identity or shared values that you have, and how you want to operate for that team to really get past the storming phase. Now, as I said before, the team was self-organized, that was going for it, and also it was cross-functional. But this team was really not disciplined at all. So everyone on the team, they never made a decision for the betterment of the whole, for the good of the whole team. When they needed to sacrifice their own interests, they could never make that sacrifice. It was really, each person did what they wanted to do, and that was how they operated. Without the ability to, or the discipline to really put your own interests aside for the betterment of the team, with that discipline, you really can't function. It really gets in the way. We did cover that this team size was manageable. So it was a small size, or a good size for what they were trying to do. But there was no collaboration on this team. So as you watch this particular episode, any discussion that happens was really not a discussion, but an argument. So a takeaway from that is talking doesn't equal collaboration, especially in this particular scenario. When their talking was really just arguments, and no one was willing to kind of compromise and give up their position for the better solution that might be out there. So they're definitely not collaborative. And kind of in that same vein, there was never a way to foster growth on this team. So one person's achievement within that team was kind of perceived as a threat to the other people on the team, because they were always just individuals operating together. There was this element of competition within the team that really inhibited its ability to grow. And so since you had that competition, there was no way to really foster that growth. No one learned from one another, even though they had a bunch of variety of experiences and a lot of diversity on the team. No one was willing to learn from that person's experience because they weren't willing to listen and collaborate. And that fostering growth was just not there. All right, so that's the example of a team that didn't work so well in The Mandalorian. And now let's go through and talk about an example where the team actually worked well. So before we get into how this team operates and who comprises this team, I'm definitely going to need to give you some backstory on this. And this is where the spoilers come involved. So again, sorry if I spoiled it for you, but again, it's been a year, so come on. Anyway, so basically the Mandalorian is a bounty hunter, and he receives a bounty from the Bounty Hunter Guild. So it's led by a guy that gives him a bounty saying, hey, here's a tracker, go find this person that this Imperial administrator on this planet wants back, essentially. So the Mandalorian takes the bounty, he follows the tracker, and the tracker leads up to the child here. And so as he sees the child, he successfully brings the child back to the administrator to collect his bounty. But he realizes that that was a mistake, because, I mean, really, who can really turn in a baby Yoda to an Imperial officer and have a clean conscience? I mean, you just can't do that. So the bounty hunter the Mandalorian turns in the child, but then realizes, that was a mistake. So he goes and rescues the child from the Imperial administrator, and they escape the planet, essentially. But as they escape, it turns out that now the bounty hunter, the Mandalorian, has a bounty on his head as well as the child. So from that point on, the rest of the season is all about the Mandalorian trying to protect the child and trying to essentially eliminate the threats that come from them, from various bounty hunters that are trying to follow them. So that's the setup of the story of why they're in danger. And so at the very end of the season, the Mandalorian decides, if we're ever going to be free and ever going to be safe from harm, we need to end the bounties that are being placed on us by essentially confronting the Imperial administrator that's placing these bounties on them, and essentially ending his life and freeing them from the danger that they're being pursued. So that's the setup. The Mandalorian needs to confront the administrator, and he realizes that he can't do it alone. I mean, he could, but he realizes it's probably better and in the best interest of the child's safety and protection to go in with a team. So let's take a look at that team in just a moment, but let's talk about vision. So unlike the team that we talked about earlier, this team is going to have a vision, and that starts with the Mandalorian and his vision of who the child is and why the child needs to be protected. So the Mandalorian developed a vision of what the child is through various experiences. He noticed that the child had these special powers, and by using the Force, which the Mandalorian didn't know what that was. And so this child was special. And it also kind of related to his backstory, where he was a child that was rescued from harm and saved by a Mandalorian. So there's a lot of similarities between the child here, this little baby Yoda, not baby Yoda, but baby alien, and his experience as a kid when he was growing up. So the Mandalorian definitely has the vision that is going to carry forward throughout the rest of the episode. Having this vision allowed the Mandalorian to go through dangerous conflicts and changing circumstances and deal with hardship successfully because he was dedicated to that vision. And so as he recruits other people to join him for the confrontation with the client, the Imperial Administrator, they eventually buy into his vision, but not at first. So as they meet the Mandalorian and know who he is, they have the trust to him and not necessarily buy into the vision, but eventually they do. So let's go into the team that the Mandalorian puts together here. So again, this is a cross-functional team that he realizes he needs to put together for the best protection of himself and the child. And so he recruits this lady here, who is a rebel shock trooper. And she essentially has a good experience working against the Empire. And so she knows the tactics of the stormtroopers, how they operate. She's seen a number of different conflicts and knows her way around weapons and fighting. She's essentially a good backup to the Mandalorian, or a good, not backup, but a good attribute or a good addition to the team because of her experience and her knowledge. The Mandalorian also recruits this guy, whose name is Queel. This guy is an Ugnaught. He was a former craftsman, I guess, in the Empire. And so this guy has a lot of experience building things. He can work well with his hands. He can basically create anything. He knows how to repair ships. He knows how to construct tools. He knows how to program droids. All these different various skills that the Mandalorian and Cara Dune, the Rebel Shock Trooper, don't have. So Queel is a good example of a specialist being on the team that's able to fulfill a specialized role and provide that support that the team needs to go forward and meet their objective. And because the Mandalorian recruits Queel, they also gain this IG assassin droid for their team. So Queel essentially salvaged this droid, reprogrammed it, and so now this droid's main objective is to protect and care for the child at all costs. And so with this droid, the team has an additional person that's willing to sacrifice anything for the protection and safety of the child, which is a part of the objective that the team's putting together. And finally, the last member that kind of joins the team is this guy here. His name is Greef Karga. This guy is the Bounty Hunter Guild leader. And so he's got a lot of experience, with weapons, with conflict and fighting. But he also has a lot of soft experience and knowledge that the team needs. So this guy has access to the client, that Imperial Administrator that's putting the bounties on the Mandalorian and the child. And so he has access and understanding of what that security detail is for the client. And he also has knowledge of the area, the planet, and the city, kind of what's going on there and how things are being run. So when you put this team together, just like the team we saw before, they should be able to meet any kind of challenge that gets thrown at their way. You have a variety of different experiences and backgrounds within this team. And with that variety of abilities and knowledge and experience, this team should be able to encounter any kind of changing situation with success, right? Which is the point of having a cross-functional team. Okay, so we talked about a cross-functional team. This team was also self-organized. So just like we saw with the other team, this team didn't necessarily have a particular dictator calling the shots within the team, right? So they were able to organize and fill the need that arose in their changing circumstances, and they were able to meet those needs because they had that variety of talent and cross functionality to them. So no one person dictated the terms. There was always a decent exchange of what they were going to do and how they're going to do it. And so they were allowed to self-organize and really figure out the best way forward on their own without someone kind of looming overhead and dictating the shots or calling or saying exactly how things should be run. So another thing going for this team is the team size. The Mandalorian didn't go into the conflict with an overwhelming force. Although he knew a lot of bounty hunters and a lot of other Mandalorians from the clan that he grew up with and trained with, he went in basically with a manageable team size, not an overwhelming army of people. In this particular screenshot, you can see the team size is essentially, well, it's 5 with the IG droid, and then possibly 6 because sometimes the child helps out in the conflict here. So this is definitely a team size where everything was manageable. Decisions were being able to be made quickly, and they could handle changing circumstances. Truly, this particular team, as you watch the final 2 episodes of when they were formed and how they worked together at the end, this team performed as a unit of one and made decisions and information flowed like a network of people rather than a really structured and rigid group of people put together. All right, so this team was also disciplined, and I have a few slides showing 2 different examples of where discipline was shown and used throughout this team. The first example is in this screenshot. Basically, the team is there in the cantina, there to confront the administrator. And prior to this particular event, one of the conditions that Cara Dune, the rebel shock trooper, had was, the security detail is just 4 stormtroopers. And so as they made their way into the city, they noticed that there was a lot more stormtroopers than just 4 hanging around in the city. And then when they got to the final meet with the client, they found out that while he initially did have 4 stormtroopers with him, an additional 2 or 3 or 4 maybe were added to that security detail. So she kind of panicked and said, "Hey, you said there were 4 stormtroopers on the security detail. What gives?" But the important thing is, so that shows that she knew kind of her limits of what she could do, but it also shows discipline in that she still relied and trusted on the team. She didn't just say, "You know what, these terms and conditions weren't met. I'm just going to leave and do my own thing and let you guys kind of handle the conflict because this was not part of the agreement," right? She didn't do that. She had discipline and she stayed together with the team, even though they were going to have to stretch and work harder than they initially planned, and their plan would probably have to change. They had the discipline to still be aligned as a team and to do whatever it would take to meet the mission of the team. So that's one example of discipline. And kind of moving forward from this particular point in the story, basically everything kind of falls apart around them. The team still stays together, but essentially what happens is a whole army of stormtroopers show up, and they are now cornered in this cantina, and they're going to have to fight their way out. And so luckily for them, the IG droid comes to their rescue, and within this cantina, there's a sewer opening that the IG droid was able to open with his blowtorch. And so the team was able to escape the platoon of soldiers into the sewers and kind of find their way out to safety. And so as they make their way through this final tunnel where there's like a lava river, they're going to go out this tunnel, and that's presumably the safe exit for the team to finally get away and meet their objective. But it turns out that on the other side of this tunnel is a whole platoon of stormtroopers. So another example of discipline is the IG droid saying, "Okay, you guys protect the child and maintain true to the objective. I'm going to go out and self-destruct and destroy the platoon of stormtroopers so that the rest of you guys can be safe and meet your mission." So that's essentially what happens here. Is the IG droid goes out and self-destructs, and all these stormtroopers that were waiting to essentially kill the Mandalorian and his team are obliterated, and the team is safe. And so that's another good example of discipline where a person on the team was able to put their interests aside for the betterment of the group. right? So not only do this team knows its limits and knows what it can and cannot accomplish, but it also has the discipline to make those selfless decisions or selfless sacrifices for the good of the team. And we'll talk about how that applies to you. I'm not saying that you need to blow yourself up, but there is an element of discipline that makes an Agile team work. And we'll talk more about that in just a little bit. Moving on, this team was also collaborative. So unlike the first team we saw where every situation or every time they talked, there was an argument, in this particular team, when they talked, there was still elements of kind of like an argumentative vibe to it or a conflict, but they were collaborative in that they were able to, give their point of view, listen to the other person talking, and then based on what that back and forth of information and ideas, they were able to find kind of the best way forward or the best solution going forward, given the changing circumstances and the changing things that are going on. So this was definitely a more collaborative team, and that they were constantly communicating with one another, and the communication that they had wasn't just talking, but was really more communicating with value. Thanks, Angela. The final part of this team was that they were able to foster growth. And so unlike the other team that we looked at where there was an element of competition, this team, you can actually see the team kind of growing together as one in a particular network of people rather than a bunch of individuals working together. So initially on this particular team, there was not a whole lot of shared trust between the team members, right? So the Mandalorian had the vision of what they were supposed to be doing, what their mission objective was, but the Bounty Hunter Guild leader, Guy and Cara Dune, they didn't really share that same vision, but they did trust the Mandalorian. And over time, as they had shared experiences and a good, I guess, understanding of this guy's got my back and we can protect each other and we can work together, that growth happened. So everyone on the team was able to, grow and expand and be successful without feeling like it was a threat to the individual person, another individual person on the team. So this was a definite example of a team actually fostering growth and coming together. Maybe they're on various points on the path, but they come together, and as they work together and have shared experiences that, work out for the best, but also they learn from failures, they were able to become a better unit of people and essentially go through that storming, norming, and performing to the performing phase of an Agile team. So that was definitely an important thing for them to do. Okay, so let's just review. So those are the points that we see within a team that works. So just as a review, let's talk about each of these individual points and how they relate to you, right? So first off, we talked about vision. In various Agile frameworks, whether it be Scrum, XP, I think a little bit, and large-scale Scrum, or maybe SAS, I think. Anyway, there's a lot of different Agile frameworks where there's one person that's identified as a person that has the vision for where the team should be going or what the team should be building. In those particular frameworks, it's called a product owner, right? So that product owner, because that person has the vision, should be able to prioritize and to make those tough decisions that align with the vision of where that product is going so that they can realize the value to their customers that they're trying to serve, right? So in your team, do you have a person that has the vision of where your team is going? Not only that, vision not only just accounts for just kind of where the product is going, but also it accounts for who you are as a team. Do you have a vision of who you are as a team? Is there a shared set of values, a shared set of agreement on what the roles are? Does your team have a vision of who you are? So just like in The Mandalorian, where not everyone shared that vision initially, that might be the case for your team. Maybe there's one person that has a vision of what they want to do or what the team should be doing, and the rest of the team doesn't. And that's okay, because you should be able to grow and learn from one another, so long as the rest of the team believe in that person that has the vision. If they can trust that person that has the vision, eventually over time, hopefully they'll understand what that vision is, and they'll be able to internalize that vision as well. So that's one thing to look at on your team, is who has a vision of who you are as a team, and where is that found, and how can you relate that to other people. The second thing is self-organization. So we talked a lot about that here. In your context, sometimes that might be a little more difficult, because how you operate as a team might be dictated based on the organization of the company that you're working for. So are you able to self-organize in that when you operate as a team, do you get a mission or an objective or a goal that you should reach, and you're given the latitude to work together in however you see fit? Or does someone higher up than you say, hey, this is how it's going to be, this is how we're going to build it? Do they dictate the terms, and you're essentially just fulfilling the order? If that's the case, you need to find a way to become more self-organized. And so this is going to be difficult in a company where the culture is not to foster self-organization. And so what you would need to do is talk to your manager and kind of explain the principle to them and say, this is why self-organization works, and we would like to try it out. If you can convince your manager or leader to say, sure, here's a small project, we just want this project done for this particular set of objectives, and you guys can go forward and do that. If you can convince your manager to try that out for maybe a smaller project, you can hopefully be successful in helping them realize the importance of self-organization as it relates to an Agile team. Another challenging kind of characteristic of an Agile team that might be difficult in your company or in your culture that you work is being a cross-functional team. So when you think of your team, do you have all the tools, knowledge, and ability to deliver some kind of product increment or some kind of output to your customers that delivers value without having to rely on another team or another department or another group of people? If you can, then truly your team is cross-functional. But if you're working on something, it turns out that you need to talk to the QA department who does something their own way, or you need to go to infrastructure to have your product delivered, that is not as cross-functional as you would like to be. It's not cross-functional at all, per the definition. So in those circumstances, that's another opportunity where you need to kind of be an advocate for that change within your company and say, hey, if you want us to deliver on a particular objective or a particular initiative, we need to be cross-functional so that we can reduce the bottlenecks and dependencies that we would have otherwise. And so reducing those dependencies, whether it be another department that has a specialist that contributes to what your team is doing, is going to be difficult. But as you work through reducing those dependencies, you will see that your team is better able to coalesce as an Agile team and to really meet any kind of challenges that you might face. Now, the whole point of that, being cross-functional and self-organized, is just based on the context of things change. Companies face different environments and different circumstances. And the better you're able to self-organize and be cross-functional, the better that you can take advantage of those opportunities and of those changes. So as you have those particular traits on your team, that's what makes you able to adapt and make those kind of quick decisions that are needed in a business environment that is constantly changing. Moving on to the next point, discipline. So when you think of your team, does everyone exhibit discipline? Meaning, are they able to put aside their own self-interest for the benefit of the team or the benefit of the sprint goal or mission or objective that you're trying to meet? If they can, that's great. That means you have a good amount of discipline within your team. Without having individual members that have that kind of quality, you're always going to run into difficult confrontations and conflicts because someone's always going to be putting their own interest in front of the needs or goals of the team, which is kind of counterproductive, really. And so as you need to really do a kind of retrospective on yourself to say, hey, am I willing to do kind of the mundane things or the crappy things for the benefit of the team? Working in software development and producing a particular product or a feature that you're trying to release to your customers doesn't always have glamorous work that needs to be done. Sometimes you're doing just tedious and mundane things that really, really are crappy. And if you don't have the discipline, you're not going to be motivated to get through those tough times. So you need to have that discipline within your team, within all members, to really get through and do that and pull together. So let's talk about a manageable team size. This is a good point that as much as people really want a magical number to be the team size that they should have, there is no magical number, right? So we saw here in two different circumstances where the team size was different, albeit just maybe by one, but it was still different. When it comes to team size, you need to think about your ideal number in the context of what you're working with, right? So depending on what you're doing, depending on where you work and your architecture and all these different factors is going to determine what your ideal team size is. But the important thing to note is that the team size should be small, right? In the Scrum Guide, I think it mentions the ideal team size is 5, give or take 2 people. So it could be 5 up to 7 or 5 down to 3 people. There's no, again, and even in the Scrum Guide, there's no set number, but that's kind of when they say small, that's kind of the number that or the range that they're thinking about. Now, one thing to point out is as you think of your team size, the reason why a small team works is because it's mathematically proven. So if you think of your team with all its individual members, if you think of your team as a network of people where each person is a node within the network, and then you think of, okay, so I have a network of 5 people, and then you think of the links that go between each individual person in that team. As you count up the links, as you get bigger, it exponentially increases. As you add a person to your team, the links don't just linearly increase, but it actually exponentially increases. So it's been mathematically proven that if you have a smaller team, you have smaller links between each other, and information is able to flow and work within that network with a reduced amount of links, right? So if you have a team of 3 to 9 people, like it's kind of advocated in the Scrum Guide and various methodologies out there, a network of 3 to 9 people roughly translates to 3 to 36 links within itself. You can manage that amount of links, right? A person can, mentally grasp and understand and navigate through a network of 36 links. As you add more people to the team, as I said before, it exponentially increases. So if you have a team of 15 people, that results in over 100 different links within that network. And so even the smartest people among us, we can't manage 100 different links within the network to make sure information goes directly to the right person and that decisions are made. As you have a network of 100 links between itself, you're going to have bottlenecks. You're going to have decisions that aren't communicated to other people. Information is just going to be scattered and not really directed or shared among that network of people. So that's why various Agile methodologies advocate for small team sizes is because it's mathematically proven that the smaller the team, the less chaos there is in terms of communication and organization going one to another. The next thing is collaboration. So we saw in our first example of a team being unsuccessfully put together is that there was no collaboration within it. And then within the Mandalorian's team, there was collaboration that existed. So when you think of your team, does your team get together and just talk, or do they actually collaborate? Because there's a difference. When a team is just talking, that means someone's saying something and the other people on the team aren't necessarily listening. They don't really care. people are just exchanging information with not the underlying objective of finding the right solution, right? A collaborative team is able to maybe put forth an idea, and then another person adds on that idea to make it even better. And then a third person maybe challenges that idea, and the whole team realizes that even despite that challenge, the idea will work, right? So that's how collaboration fosters that correct solution finding. Without that collaboration, you might not find, the right opportunity or the right solution for the objective that you're trying to meet. You got to have collaboration within your team, and especially now since we're kind of in the situation that we are, collaboration has been a bit more difficult. So when you think of collaboration on your team, if you're working in a remote context, let's say, where everyone's maybe messaging on Slack or Teams or whatever solution it is, do you get to a point where maybe you're 5 or 6 replies into a thread and you say, okay, this is obviously a more complex thing that we're trying to figure out. Let's everyone just get on a call and talk it through. If you have that face-to-face communication, even through video conferencing, you're able to quicken or speed up the solution finding process by virtue of having that face-to-face communication. And that's where the real collaboration is. There's not really good solutions that come from just email threads. It's from people talking together, albeit face-to-face in a video chat. But you need to understand and enrich that communication to foster that collaboration, if that makes sense. So Zaria had a question here. David, could you restate talking versus collaborative? So that's a good question. The way I think of it is talking is just exchanging ideas. Collaboration is improving on those ideas. So as you're talking, you're just kind of, exchanging ideas, but you don't have the underlying purpose of improving on that idea or finding a better solution, right? So talking involves just kind of a one-way communication, whereas collaboration is there's two-way communication, there's active learning involved, and everyone's kind of unified to find a better solution and add on, or maybe even challenge a particular idea so that we can all come together and find the best idea moving forward. Does that make sense? Okay, cool, awesome. Good question. Okay, so the next one here is going on to fostering growth. So as you think of your team, does your team foster growth? And there's a lot of different things that come into that. So first off, how do you manage failure within your team? Because if you're a team that fosters growth and people are going to try to stretch themselves to learn something new or try something different, or maybe try a different kind of technology within their solution, if you foster growth, you have to be able to learn from failure and accept failure, right? Not any one of us on our team is able to deliver 100% of the time the right thing at the right time. There's going to be times where we fall short, and even though we try to learn something new, we're not going to understand that concept perfectly as we're learning. So on your team, if you foster growth, you have to be able to gracefully handle failure, if you will. You need to learn from it, and you need to not punish people that try something and fail. So that's one way to foster growth, is just how do you handle failure and how do you handle people trying to do something new. And kind of along that same vein is on your team, when you think about fostering growth, does everyone on the team, are they interested in growing or learning new things or trying new things? Or are they kind of stagnant and saying, well, this is the way I've done it, and this is the way I've always done it, and this is just who I am, right? A team that fosters growth encourages individual growth as well, right? So just because I've been a BA for, I think it's 9 years now, doesn't mean that I know everything when it comes to finding requirements and eliciting requirements or anything tied to being a business analyst. There's plenty of things that I still need to learn and to work on. And so in a team that fosters growth, if I really want to grow, I should be able to learn something new as it relates to being a BA, but also I should be able to take feedback and not criticism, but just positive feedback saying, hey, maybe you can try this or work, try this differently. A team that fosters growth always also is able to give feedback in a positive manner in a way that helps people learn and helps people grow, and not in a threatening way. Another point that comes along with fostering growth is, when you think about your team, how do you mentor one another? Is it just seniors mentoring juniors, or can juniors actually mentor the seniors? If you have that two-way kind of mentorship, what that tells me and what that shows your team is that you have a team that's willing to learn and willing to grow, even from the person that has the least experience. And to that point, as we're put together on teams, we should be able to learn and grow from other people that have backgrounds that are different from us. We should be model citizens of what diversity looks like on our teams. Everyone should be able to feel free like they can contribute and they have something to teach others, regardless of whether that junior dev straight from college is talking to a senior dev that's been at it for 15, 20 years. In a team that fosters growth, you will always have that learning and that mentorship going back and forth. Everyone is able to contribute in a valuable way. There's no kind of set hierarchy that has to be reinforced and followed, if you will. Another good Agile framework that talks about fostering growth is modern Agile. So if you look at modern Agile, the key points or the key objective of that Agile framework is to make people awesome. And one of the tenets that they have is having a safe environment. If you have an environment that fosters growth, well, you have that safe environment. You make it safe for people to fail, to try new things, to learn and grow. That's a part of that Agile framework, and it's something that I would encourage you to really evaluate on your team. Another thing to evaluate as it relates to fostering growth is, are individuals rewarded over the team, right? So when you do reviews, is the team reviewed individually, and are they rewarded for their individual contributions, or is the team rewarded for its contribution as a whole? A lot of times, if you reward individuals for what they're doing rather than the team as a whole, you kind of fall into that competitive trap where one person's success might be viewed as a threat to another person, or one person's recognition for what they did might devalue what you're trying to do as a team. Really, just like in The Mandalorian, there are no heroes that stand out. They all worked together in that final team to put out something amazing or to achieve the mission that they had. Same thing for your team. You all are working together, and the contributions that one person does shouldn't be valued more than the contribution of another person. The end result of what you're producing as a team is really what matters. That's where the value is. So think about how you're interacting with the individuals on a team. If you're a manager or an executive and you're kind of reinforcing those individual aspects of a team, then I would encourage you to kind of think of how you can reinforce or value the team as a whole. Now, that's not to mean that you just totally disregard any kind of individual contributions. That's not what I'm saying, but you just have to play that balance, right? Okay, so those are things to assess on your team and to think about. And like I said before, this list isn't exhaustive. There's other things out there, but these are just things that you will see in The Mandalorian that makes sense in terms of putting together an Agile team and really becoming a team that's performing and putting value out towards the company or the customers that you serve. Just some final thoughts before we close out the talk, and I appreciate you guys joining in and listening. Hopefully, I started a little bit early, so if you joined a little bit late, I apologize, and that was on me, but I just couldn't stand looking at myself for 15 minutes. So some final thoughts. So why do you need an Agile team? Well, they make work better. Right? So an Agile team, if you've ever been on a team where everyone works as a unit and all the information is there, you can make all the decisions you're needing. There really is a difference that when you're on an Agile team that's high performing versus a team that just kind of is a group of individuals kind of collectively put together, right? One of the things that I've seen as I've been on various Agile teams in my experience is it just makes work better. There was a particular team that I was on where we were doing some really mundane and detail-oriented, but just not fun tasks. Our entire project was just not fun in terms of the objective that we're trying to reach. However, we were able to go through as a team, and we had these qualities that I've talked about. And because we had these qualities, even though the thing that we were doing wasn't that great, and we had a lot of challenges and a lot of difficulties, being an Agile team made it, I guess, bearable, or made it better, right? We could laugh at the difficult circumstances. We could overcome and work the additional hours that were needed. Basically, we were able to deliver despite having all these difficulties cast upon us, because we were that Agile team. Now, if we were a group of individuals being put together, that would have been just complete and absolute failure and misery, right? So an Agile team makes things better because you're a high-performing team at that point, and you can get through the difficult things that often come when it comes to software development. Another point is to think about is the Agile Manifesto didn't invent these particular principles, right? Just because it's in the Agile Manifesto doesn't mean it never existed before, right? So what is important is you need to know why you're doing the certain things that you're doing. So if you're following Scrum, you need to understand why you're doing the daily stand-ups, or why you're doing the retrospectives, all these different ceremonies. If you understand the why you're doing it, then the principle behind it, then those things will be meaningful and less just busy work, right? So understanding the why behind these principles is what really makes an individual an Agile individual. It's not that you've done these things, it's that you understand why and the importance of them that really contribute to you becoming an Agile team. So I'd encourage you guys to know the principles or the reason why you're doing whatever it is you're doing. Whatever framework you're in, whether it's Kanban, Scrum, XP, test-driven development, whatever it is that you're trying to do, know the reason why a certain thing exists. And once you know that, then you can start taking those frameworks and changing them to meet your team's needs better, right? So there were various teams that I've been on where we were doing Scrum, and we found that the daily stand-up wasn't at all beneficial to us. So within that group, we just got rid of it, and we communicated our updates or communicated what we were doing in a different way, because we understood that the point of a daily stand-up is to not give a status, but to just plan your work and collaborate and have that exchange of planning and needing to communicate with one another. And so that's what we did. So as you think of what you're doing, if you understand why it's there, you can kind of adjust your framework to better meet the needs of your team. And really, that's what I explain to you. So in the Mandalorian, the catchphrase is, "This is the way." Well, for each team, your way is different, right? A lot of consultants try this, but I can't go into your company and say, "This is exactly how you should do it, and if you do it this way, you're going to be successful." I can't do that because I'm not a part of the team. I'm not a part of the culture, the identity of the team, and I can't dictate the solutions that you should be finding for your team. That's a thing that you need to find on your own. So really, you need to find your own way. There is no "this is the way." It just doesn't exist. One last point I wanted to make before I close out my talk. So I didn't show you how to code better. I didn't show you some sort of new fancy tool that will make your life easier, nor did I show you a time-saving shortcut. But all of us are very introverted, especially myself. And it's easy to kind of focus on tools, tricks, and tips that are going to make you a technically better person. But the point of this talk and the point of this whole thing is to help you focus on the softer side of what it is that you do, right? So as you understand people and learn how to communicate and have these different qualities that I've shown, as you improve upon those soft skills and learn how to deal with humans, your job is going to be better, right? you are going to be able to deliver greater value because you have that higher skilled communication and that higher skilled ability to work within a group of humans to produce valuable results, right? So while it's easy on the technical side to adjust and evaluate where you are, you either know JavaScript really well or you don't, or you either know all sorts of programming languages or you don't. It's really easy to assess where you are technically. It's harder to assess where you are in the social aspect of things, on the softer side of what your job is. Now, each of us, even the most remote, probably has to work with another person in what it is that we're doing, right? Even if you're producing software in the basement or the corner of your basement, eventually that software is going to be used by another human, hopefully. And if that software is used by another human, that's where the software side comes in. You got to know how to communicate and how to talk to that person to really realize the value. And so I would encourage you to really look at the softer side of your job, learn to work with humans, and to really understand these different principles that we talked about. As you understand these different principles, you'll start to see these principles in all sorts of different things, right? So I'm pretty sure when The Mandalorian was written, the guys had no clue, the writers had no clue of what the Agile manifesto was or how software development works. But they were able to touch on human principles that hold regardless of what it is that you're doing, right? So figure out what those principles are for you and work on them. And then as you do, you will find out that your ride within your team is much more enjoyable. So I encourage you guys to enjoy the ride because you spend a lot of time on the team, and so you might as well make the most of it. And that is my talk for today. I appreciate you guys listening. What time is it? It is 10:30. So I've got, I guess, 10 minutes on the schedule. If you have any questions, you can drop those in the chat. And I'll try to address any questions that you might have. But you can find me on Twitter and LinkedIn. Just put in my name there, and you should be able to find me. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Elizabeth. Appreciate you coming. Thanks, Rebecca. Appreciate it. Hey, good to see you, JR. Thanks. Thanks, Richard. So Zaria asked, could you elaborate more on the importance of being cross-functional? Sure. So cross-functional, you don't have to be 100% cross-functional necessarily on a team. A lot of different companies have let's say a UI UX department or a QA department or an infrastructure department where you have to rely on other people to get things done. But cross-functional teams are advocated for a lot of different Agile frameworks and Agile organizations. It's something that they're a proponent of. And the reason being is if you're a cross-functional team, the idea is you have all the abilities and the skills to release whatever it is that you're supposed to be doing. So, and the reason for that is, again, going back to the whole idea of agility, is you should be able to, if you have a cross-functional team, you should be able to produce results without relying on anyone else to get those results done. So, for example, if I'm creating a new feature, and let's say within my team, I don't have anyone that has a UI UX experience at all. So if I'm trying to relay how this feature is going to be working and I need to design that, if I don't have the skill to design it, then I need to find someone that does outside of my team. And so the act of relying on someone outside of your team, that builds in time and a bottleneck of dependencies, so that the thing that I'm trying to produce is now dependent on someone else on a different team. And so because I don't have that cross-functional ability where I can create my own mock-ups and do my own UI UX design, we have that dependency where we're waiting now to release our feature to our customer because we got to have it designed and approved and go through all these different steps. So if you're a cross-functional team, that dependency is eliminated. And so you can just essentially create the idea, design it, develop it, test it, and release it to your customers in a lot quicker fashion. And that's the whole point of being an agile cross-functional team is that time to market. As you reduce the time to market because you're cross-functional, that's better because you can get the feedback that you need to really refine that idea and find the value that needs to be there. Does that make sense, Zara? Okay, cool. Anyone else have questions? No? All right. Well, like I said, I appreciate everyone joining, and I will drop out here. So thank you guys, and enjoy the rest of Code PaLOusa, and feel free to take some of this extra time that you have to visit the sponsors there on the Expo channel. I appreciate you guys. Take care.